Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the conference. We are going to kick today off with a conversation with Kelly Gauger from the Refugee Admissions Bureau and Population, Refugees, and Migration, and Ken Tota from the Refugee Program at the Bureau in the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Before we get started, you guys are all pros at CVent by now, but please make sure that you are interacting in there. There's still points up for grabs. You can be the leaderboard with gamification. You can access recordings for any of the sessions you may have missed yesterday. The recordings from today will still be available after each session. And then we also have a partner board for both of our speakers today from their agencies. Please interact with them there. We've got some updated great resources. And I am going to turn this over to David Berenbaum, Deputy Assistant Secretary. David, take it away.
Thank you so much, Emily, and good morning, everyone. This morning's coffee conversation is going to highlight the important work of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, along with the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, being done in partnership with the Office of Housing Counseling to make sure new Americans can access safe and affordable housing. Many of you who have participated in our regional meetings across the country have enjoyed the sessions that Ruth Roman, our colleague at the Office of Housing Counseling, has been leading. And you've asked us to provide more information, more in-depth information and tools and resources moving forward. For those of you who are not familiar with the work of these important agencies, let me provide a little bit of background for you. The U.S. Refugee Admissions Program is managed by the United States Department of State in cooperation with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The domestic resettlement process and welcome of refugees and new Americans and other eligible newcomers is where we see close coordination between the offices represented in this very session. The U.S. Department of State's Bureau for Population, Refugees, and Migration, what's called PRM as an acronym, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, to help refugees start a new life in our country. ORR and PRM have been partnering with HUD on several initiatives, including the Office of Housing Council regional meetings and coordination of programs and initiatives, including housing counseling. Many of you are aware, and we'll cover this more in depth, that we've also posted many resources on the HUD Exchange and elsewhere that we'll share with you a little bit later in the half hour. Now, OR has a memorandum of understanding with HUD's Field Policy and Management Office, and PRM and ORR are engaging with HUD's Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Office to provide education on refugees and fair housing laws that protect those individuals and families. In addition, in May of 2024, the fact sheet on renting to refugees and other eligible newcomers was finalized and published. This interagency effort between ORR, PRM, HUD, and Homeland Security was in response to a request from the national resettlement agencies to educate property managers unfamiliar with ORR populations with the aim of reducing hesitancy in considering them as tenants and neighbors. Today, I'm joined by two very special guests and colleagues. I invite them to come on camera. First, Ken Tota, who is the Bureau Chief for ORR's Refugee Program, and Kelly Gauger, the Deputy Director for PRM in the Office of Refugee Admissions. I'd like to welcome each of you. Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us today at our housing conference.
Good morning, David. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
So a lot of our folks on the call today or on the meeting today are unfamiliar with refugee resettlement, and I'd like to invite each of you to provide a brief overview of the work that you do, including the type of newcomers your program serves, the role of your offices in welcoming newcomers, and how your two offices coordinate to integrate these new neighbors in our nation. So, Kelly, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll go to Ken.
Sure, I am happy to start. Thank you. Okay, so the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, which we refer to with the acronym USRAP, was established following passage of the Refugee Act in 1980, which amended the Immigration and Nationality Act, or INA. So, of course, while the United States has always admitted immigrants and refugees, the program that we know today as the USRAP was really structured in 1980. The USRAP has a long history of bipartisan support and is an essential part of longstanding U.S. leadership in humanitarian affairs globally. With the exception of a couple of years, we are consistently the largest resettlement country in terms of numbers and also the most diverse. Most years resettling refugees from somewhere around 70 countries, and whom we interview and process in some 80 to 90 locations. So we have a very large and diverse worldwide footprint overseas, processing refugees for U.S. resettlement. This year, our goal is to admit 100,000 refugees, and with the end of the fiscal year just 11 days away, we've admitted around 93,000 refugees, which is a record high. We haven't admitted this many refugees in many decades. But we still have 7,000 to go over the next 11 days. So we'll have a lot of arrivals in the next week and a half. And in case people are curious, our largest nationalities these days in terms of numbers are Afghans, Congolese from the DRC, Venezuelans, Burmese, and Syrians. And let me just say a few more words before handing it over to Ken. The USRAP offers access to resettlement in the United States. This is permanent resettlement. So when refugees arrive, they are actually required to apply for a green card within a year. They're eligible for citizenship within 5. And refugees are people who are overseas, they're outside of their country of origin, and who have been persecuted or have a well-founded fear of persecution based on one of what we call the 5 protected grounds. So those are race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. We serve both refugees and individuals with special immigrant visas. Those are largely Afghans these days, Afghans who worked with the United States in Afghanistan. We currently fund 10 domestic resettlement agencies that are mostly based in the Northeast, but throughout the country right now have about 355 affiliated offices. We're going to have even more offices in FY25, probably up to about 370. And these offices provide initial support funded by the State Department for the initial 30 to 90 days. And in those 30 to 90 days with State Department funding, these agencies help refugees in getting on a path to self-sufficiency through employment as soon as possible and coordinate with other community partners. So in terms of what we expect agencies to provide, basic necessities, housing, furnishing, clothing, pocket money, assistance for applying for cash and medical, and cultural orientation.
Yeah, Kelly, we're really
now
excited.
I'm going to turn it, I think, over to Ken.
So just before Ken starts speaking, a quick observation. One, we were really excited about the participation of these resettlement agencies to network and collaborate and share their expertise with our housing counseling organizations at the regional meetings. And as well, I'd like to share with you that it looks like 2 of the agencies are actually interested in pursuing becoming a HUD counseling intermediary, and they're in discussion with our office. So building these bridges and coordination of resources coupled with more active participation in our program, it's very, very exciting. All right, Ken.
Excellent. We're excited too.
Yeah, Ken, let's turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, David. Very, very excited to hear that new coordination coming forward. So a little bit about the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So our role is really providing some of the longer term supports and coordination, certainly with our state and local governments. For more than 40 years, OR's mission has really expanded to serve many vulnerable newcomer populations fleeing their countries to seek safety in the U.S. Our authority to serve these populations is authorized by Congress And it has been expanded over the years since the program was started. It does include refugees, certainly as Kelly mentioned, but also would be asylees. So those would be individuals granted asylum in the U.S., other Cubans or Haitians actually granted entry into the U.S., Afghan and special immigrant visa holders who supported the U.S. mission in Afghanistan and Iraq, certain victims of human trafficking, and some Afghan humanitarian and Ukrainian parolees who were more recently granted and made eligible for services within the U.S. So once an individual or family arrives at their state or destination, that's really when ORR role begins. We offer various resettlement services to really facilitate such successful transition to life in the U.S., and that's usually up to 5 years after their arrival. This includes case management, English language classes, job readiness, and real focus on employment services to really support longer-term integration. The goal of the program really is that early employment, and so much of the services are focused around really gaining self-sufficiency and really helping folks integrate into their communities, and often really helping them on a professional career path so that they can be members of their communities with hopefully an eventual goal of even home ownership in many of those communities. We administer these services really through an extensive private public grantee network that includes replacement many of our states, but also replacement designee organizations who are operating in place of some states and some locations, the 10 national resettlement agencies Kelly mentioned, and a number of other faith-based and other community organizations who help carry out this work. Many of our grantees are the same that are in the PRM network, and we really do work very closely together to really help coordinate services and service delivery across the network. That often includes really regular capacity planning discussions, a lot of discussions around capacity at the local level, often topical interagency working groups to help solve some of those problems, and a lot of engagement with our state refugee coordinators, our resettlement agencies, and even many of the other local community providers to really help ensure service delivery is really helping newcomers thrive in those communities.
Thank you so much, Ken. I have to share, it's not going to surprise either of you that housing affordability, the limited supply of housing have been themes in many of the sessions at this conference. In particular, we have a session later today on that topic. Adrian Todman, our acting secretary, spoke to the challenges in our country right now. I know from our conversations with your networks that housing is a challenge for the populations you serve as well. So I'm curious if you could share with us what you view as sort of the biggest challenges and how some of these challenges may be unique to the new American population. Ken, why don't you kick us off? I'm sorry, Kelly, you want to go first? Go right ahead.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure. Sorry, I don't want to jump over Ken. Yes. Especially in recent years, housing has been a real challenge and a priority for our resettlement agency partners, as it has been for everybody working to support refugees across the U.S. I mean, we're dealing with both an affordability and an access problem. And given the significant need to expand housing solutions to our populations, PRM and ORR are both looking beyond programming for solutions and have really valued our collaboration with HUD. We are fully aware that affordable housing is scarce across the board in the United States, with many families in need of limited available homes. Refugees are competing for housing among the many others who are trying to access affordable housing. One of our grantees that I'm especially excited about is Refugee Housing Solutions, which is largely administered by Church World Service. And they surveyed refugee service providers across 45 states about the housing landscape. And 90, the majority who responded, most of whom are local resettlement agencies who are in the position of helping clients find housing, indicated that 91% of their clients cannot sustainably afford their housing costs. So even as we have increased the per capita payment that we provide to agencies who are resettling refugees, of course, that's only for the first 30 to 90 days. And so it's very hard to find a sustainable solution. So with our goal now of 100,000, as I mentioned, and a more efficient processing system overseas, we've just been really picking up the pace of arrivals. And a lot of arrivals are coming more quickly than in the past, which means that a lot of our resettlement agencies don't have as much advanced planning time as they used to. And so that's kind of like a perfect storm of people who they know are coming, but they don't know exactly when. And then when they find out when, it's relatively short notice. And then of course in the constrained housing market. So while most of the arrivals will find housing within the first 90 days, many will be initially placed in temporary housing, including hotels, until a more viable long-term solution becomes available.
Definitely a challenging environment, no question. Ken, could you share your thoughts?
Sure, David. As Kelly said, we spend a lot of time talking about housing between our agencies and really trying to see how we can best certainly support newcomers. And I think as well, we recognize there are many U.S. housing programs in many communities. There's often long wait lists for many of these properties. And that wait list can really be years long. So that's often not a viable option, certainly for newcomers who are really looking for housing upon arrival. Probably the other complication in that as well is often landlords are quite reluctant to rent to newcomers, really because refugees don't have a credit history in the U.S., really don't have often upfront employment to really prove that they can pay the rent. Application processes are quite complicated. And so that often creates a lot of challenges, certainly for tenants really looking to build relationships with landlords. So that presents a number of challenges in terms of really trying to gain additional landlord capacity. When we've really tried to look at what might be helpful in helping landlords really build that capacity, we have worked really with amongst the interagency, develop a resource for newcomers. This was an initiative between HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of State, Homeland Security, and HUD to really prepare a fact sheet on renting to refugees and other eligible newcomers. This was really meant as a resource to landlords and property managers so they could really consider renting to these populations and have a lot more information around some of the resources that are available to them, but also some of the vetting that takes place before their arrival. So hopefully that can help really cultivate more of those relationships and collaboration.
Absolutely, Ken. It's really been interesting because a lot of the, I'll just term real life situations that have emerged at our regional meetings where housing counseling groups are working with those who are in the New American space to provide services. Some of the best practices or model programs definitely are open to emulation and growth around the country. And we're looking forward at the Office of Housing Counseling of compiling all of these model programs together so that we can learn from each other and try to take these initiatives more to scale and engage more faith-based organizations, more of the safety net and social services, and leverage the resources, rather cylindered resources that are out there right now. We need to bring people together. And just thinking about that as a possibility, let's speak about the future a little bit. I mean, over the past year and a half, our offices have been proactively partnering to educate, to bring people together, to build this network or parachute available to help people. What do you believe is the best way we can move this counseling partnership ahead? How can we work together to support these populations?
Great.
Ken, if you want to take it from there. Yeah.
Sure, David. I can't tell you how really excited and just appreciative I am of the collaboration from HUD and the Office of Housing Counseling. It has been, I think, just such an effective partnership so far, and so really look forward to continuing that collaboration and development and all those initiatives you just mentioned, David. You had mentioned early in some of your opening remarks. So, one of the, I think, initial initiatives was ORR and HUD's Field Policy and Management Office signed an MOU back in August 2023 with the goal of really ensuring equitable access to affordable, safe, and adequate housing for many of the OR populations I mentioned. One of the most significant outcomes of the MOU is to ensure national and regional collaboration between the two agencies to really share resources, information, identify gaps and challenges, and collaborate on strategic initiatives to really support the populations. And we've really seen great momentum through these partnerships, including the Office of Housing Counseling. I really believe that it's through this close collaboration with the Office of Housing Counseling, OR and PRM. We've been really engaging nationally and regionally to connect many of the resettlement agencies and other nonprofits assisting refugees with housing and connecting them to the local housing counseling agencies. It's been specifically helpful, I think, in Atlanta, Houston, and Kansas City, where the Office of Housing Counseling is planning some real targeted outreach to refugee and newcomer communities. And these agencies provide support and guidance to really help clients budget and manage funds to really help prevent what could be eventual evictions. This partnership has also been, I think, extremely helpful as a resource to our refugee state coordinators and other local resettlement agency staff who have been connecting with the Office of Housing Counselor providers in the regions. These relationships have been very mutually beneficial as resettlement stakeholders have shared best practices working with OR eligible populations, and in particular, really support around language access, which is really critical for these populations. And I think it's also great to learn that some of those agencies are actually now have reached out to HUD to actually become certified Office of Housing Counselor providers, as you mentioned. So really, really great to see that. And of course, that does provide some initial funding, which can really help them in some of their sustainability and capacity building. So really, really so excited and great to see all the momentum that this happens since.
Really realizing all of our missions through this collaborative effort. And Kelly, how about you? What are your recommendations for our path forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think as has been mentioned by both of you, some of our local resettlement agencies are piloting becoming housing counseling certified. So we hope that, I mean, I don't know if it's too much to hope that all of them could become housing counseling certified. I think it feels like a skill that and a knowledge base that would be beneficial to all of them. So we'll just continue to encourage engagement between all of our offices and hope to partner and provide more educational opportunities for our grantees in the future so that we can serve our beneficiaries even better, and keep contributing to that American dream and allowing refugees to resettle in the United States, start their new lives, and hopefully in safe, decent, and affordable housing.
It's really interesting. Many of the staff for the resettlement agencies who I engaged with in the various cities across the country, they actually shared their journey to the United States with me. And what was particularly really heartfelt was when folks were sharing when they bought their first home.
Yes.
Some, they said it was 5 years after they arrived. Another individual told me 10 years. But the pride of becoming a resident of our nation and then pursuing citizenship, becoming a homeowner, it was really, really, really special. And that's what I think we all want to see, that form of success. It is a struggle at first. And so many generations of Americans have gone through the same struggle. I think about my grandparents coming from Europe and what they left and the reasons they left. They were truly refugees. We need to remember the roots of our country for so many, as well as to assure opportunity for all, however we came to the shores of this nation. So I just want to thank you both for the work that you each do. It's so, so important, and your agencies. And now I'm going to turn things back to Emily to close us out. But I invite everyone to take advantage of continuing the discussion on David's Corner on CVent. Let us know your thoughts about how we can continue this good momentum that has been created. It could be at upcoming regional meetings. It could be through new resources. Ideally, we're looking to increase the availability of resources to all who work in this space. And hopefully Congress will recognize the importance of that as well. So Emily, back to you. Kelly and Ken, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. Really great to be a part of the conference.
All right, thank you for this amazing discussion. This is not the last that you will hear of this. If you guys want to come to, we have a session about the unhoused and at-risk populations where some of this conversation will continue. I want to point out we have lots of amazing resources that you can find here. If you go to the partner page within CVent, there's also amazing resources there. You can also check out the partnership page on the HUD Exchange. All those resources were updated very, very recently. So the latest and greatest is there at your fingertips. And Ken and Kelly also pointed out quite a few fact sheets and different places that you can go for information. So there's not a lack of information. Reach out at any time and anyone will help you get the information you need. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next sessions.